Hello guys, today I'm going to be showcasing 2 solo builds for PVE, which I believe are the best for running the latest Alani Kelso Master difficulty mission. So for those who don't know, this is the manhunt mission that you unlock once you complete all 11 scouts for this current season. So once you complete all the scouts, you'll have Master difficulty unlocked for Roosevelt Island. So with these 2 builds that I'll be showing you guys, they're very well balanced. So high survivability, consistent high damage output, armor regeneration, and all that good jazz, okay? The Roosevelt Island manhunt mission isn't really that bad for the most part. However, if you plan on soloing it on Master difficulty, then it's gonna help big time having a fairly decent amount of survivability, especially when clearing the courtyard. Because the courtyard is easily the most challenging part of this mission, mainly due to the hunters you'll need to fight towards the end. So, having survivability is going to be crucial when fighting those hunters. Now, before we get started, I know hunters can be extremely challenging to fight, so I'm going to show some gameplay footage of the strategy I used to take them down, as well as some tips and things to look out for. So if that's of interest to you, then stick around till the end of the video for that. Now, without further ado, let's get started. So this first setup is a Foundry Bulwark build. For those of you who've been watching my recent videos, you may have seen me showcase this setup before, but there's one piece that I swapped out, so it's a bit different. This build is viable for Master difficulty since the Foundry set provides a nice amount of armor regeneration, which helps out a lot since the NPCs on this difficulty are mainly elite and hit extremely hard. So it's for this reason that I also have some protection from elite mods stacked on this setup as well. It only helps increase survivability even further, right? Now this build also has a great amount of damage. However, the only downside to this setup is that it isn't that great when it comes to fighting the hunters once you reach the courtyard. However, what you can do right before the hunters spawn is swap to the pestilence, and I'm going to show you a great spot to fight them later in the video. For the primary weapon, I'm using the Chameleon Exotic Assault Rifle. This gun is amazing, and it's now officially my favorite weapon to farm with. Its weapon talent provides 3 different buffs that basically boost DPS. So, with the talent Adaptive Instincts, you get a 20% critical hit chance and 50% critical hit damage increase for landing 30 headshots. Then for landing 65 body shots, you get a 90% weapon damage increase, and for landing 20 leg shots, you get a 150% reload speed bonus. All these buffs last for 45 seconds, so you want to make sure you're constantly landing at least those headshots and body shots so that you're keeping that increased weapon damage and critical hit bonuses active for the most part. Now for the secondary weapon, I'm using the Lexington, but feel free to use whatever you want, it doesn't really matter, because we'll be using the Chameleon for the most part. But if you don't have the Chameleon, then the Lexington would be a great alternative if you have one. The Chameleon works better with Foundry because Foundry is designed for a tank, so you're not getting any bonuses that are relevant for a DPS. So the Chameleon's Adaptive Instinct talent compensates for this, right? For the mask, a Foundry Bulwark mask with armor and critical hit damage, and a 12% protection from elite mod. Then for the vest, a Fenris group piece with weapon damage and crits, with a 12% protection from elite mod. And I also get a 10% bonus assault rifle damage from the 1-piece bonus, rolled with the talent Intimidate. And Intimidate helps add even more increased weapon damage. For those who are new and don't know, I'll explain how this talent works in just a moment. But for the holster, another Foundry piece with armor and critical hit damage. Then for the knee pads, a 3rd piece of Foundry with armor and critical hit damage. And for the gloves, the final piece of Foundry with, again, armor and critical hit damage. So for all the Foundry pieces, I have armor and critical hit damage rolled, okay? Then for the backpack, a Sheska bag with armor regen, and critical hit damage with a 12% protection from elite mod. And with Cheska, you get an 8% critical hit chance bonus, rolled with the talent Adrenaline Rush. So Adrenaline Rush will basically give you bonus armor whenever you're within 10 meters of an enemy, and you get about 20% for 5 seconds, plus it can stack up to 3 times. Now the reason I'm using this talent is not only for the increased survivability, but it also helps activate the Intimidate vest talent. So if you take a look at the Intimidate talent, while you have bonus armor, you gain 1 stack each second up to a max of 9, and each stack increases weapon damage by 4% to enemies within 10 meters. Now for those who are new, the Foundry gear set works great with the ballistic shield because you get a 50% shield health for the 3-piece bonus, right? As well as 1% armor regeneration and a nice 10% increased total armor. And for 4 pieces, you get the makeshift repairs talent, which repairs both you and your shield's health by 25% if you or your shield take damage. For the secondary skill, I went with the Reviver Hive. And for the weapon specialization, I'm running Survivalist for the extra 10% protection from elites. So this is going to stack with the other PVE mods, right? This attribute is going to help out a lot, especially when fighting the hunters. Now for the stats, in case anyone is curious, 39% critical hit chance and 117% critical hit damage on the Chameleon. But remember, with the Adaptive Instincts talent on the Chameleon, I'm getting an extra 20% critical hit chance. So ideally, you want to have anywhere between 30 to 40% critical hit chance since it caps at 60%, right? Now for the global modifiers, I'm using Overdrive for the active. Overdrive instantly maxes out your rogue momentum meter and you'll get a 30% weapon damage, skill damage, and rate of fire increase for 10 seconds, as well as unlimited ammo. Now, there is a penalty, but it isn't that harsh, and it can be countered with the critical momentum passive modifier. So critical hits have a 40% chance to grant 1% momentum. I'm also using critical recovery, which restores 0.5% of your maximum armor for landing crits. So critical recovery helps amplify the armor regeneration, which is really helpful, especially when you reach the courtyard with the constant mortar strikes. And for the third passive modifier, reactive reinforcement, since I'm using the ballistic shield. So this modifier basically heals 5% of your max armor when your shield takes damage, so it's a bit similar to the makeshift repairs talent. So guys, this next build is easily the strongest of the two. This is a 4-piece Striker setup utilizing the Striker chest piece for the extra damage. Striker is absolutely incredible with the Chameleon. And this is because Striker provides up to 65% increased weapon damage at full stacks, which basically gets doubled with the Striker vest, not to mention the 90% weapon damage increase coming from the Chameleon's Adaptive Instincts talent. And with the addition of the exotic Memento backpack, that's another 30% increased weapon damage at full stacks. However, the only downside, if any, is that this setup doesn't have as much survivability as the previous. So for the primary and secondary weapon, the Chameleon and Lexington with Killer, but if you would rather run the Lexington, then that's another great option. The Lexington has much better accuracy and damage drop-off, but go with whatever floats your boat. Worst case scenario, if you don't have either of these weapons, try the Police M4, Carbine 7, or any other high-end AR with a decent RPM. Striker is so powerful that you can get away with using almost any weapon. For the mask, a Striker mask with armor, critical hit damage, and a protection from elites mod. And for the vest, a Striker vest with armor, critical hit chance, and another protection from elites mod. Now for the holster, a Bellstone piece for the 1% armor regeneration, rolled with armor, armor regen, and critical hit chance. Then for the knee pads, a third Striker piece with armor and critical hit chance. Then for the gloves, the fourth and final piece of Striker with armor and critical hit damage. And last but certainly not least, the Memento backpack, which comes with all 3 core attributes. So weapon damage, armor, and skill tier. Many of you already know how this backpack works, right? So the Memento bag basically provides a short and long-term buff. The short-term buff provides weapon damage, bonus armor, and skill efficiency. So you're getting this amount, right? Depending on the corresponding amount of the core attributes you have. So for instance, I have 6 blues, 1 yellow, and 1 red core attributes with this build. So for each trophy I collect, I get 5% weapon damage, 60% bonus armor, and 5% skill efficiency. You're also stacking a long-term buff for every trophy that you collect as well. The long-term buff will grant you 1% weapon damage, skill efficiency, and about 0.1% armor regeneration. This can stack up to 30 times, so after you've collected 30 trophies, you'll basically have 30% weapon damage and roughly like 3% armor regen, right? And you can easily keep the long-term buff active since it will last for 5 minutes, so all you'll need to do is collect a trophy to refresh the timer. You can even save some trophies on the ground for later once you maxed out. For the skills, the Ballistic Crusader Shield and Reviver Hive, and for the weapon specialization, I went with Gunner for the armor on kill bonus, but if you want that 10% extra protection from elites, you can also go with Survivalist. And for the stats, just in case anyone's wondering, 43% critical hit chance and 69% critical hit damage. And for the modifiers, the same as the previous build, so overdrive for the active, then both critical recovery and momentum, and reactive reinforcement for the passives. Okay guys, so what I'm going to do now is show you guys a great spot to camp at once the hunters spawn. So you're going to come this way. So you're going to be back at the location you entered the courtyard from. So by this big yellow container, this spot also has an ammo box. So if you end up running low on ammo, you can restock. Also, it would be a lot better if you got to this spot first before the hunters spawn. That way you don't risk going down from them shooting you in the back. So what you can do is save the last few NPCs. Then once you get over to this spot, you can go ahead and clear the remaining adds, which will trigger the spawn of the hunters, right? So this is a great strategy that worked out well for me. I like to keep my distance when fighting hunters if I can because they hit way too hard. Like, it's crazy how strong they are. Plus, it's way too risky since you'll have to start over again if you go down. But what I also like about this spot is if the hunters were to rush you, you have the option to fall back and retreat towards the beginning area of the mission, so you're not stuck with no way out. But another thing to take note of is that the hunters can heal themselves, which can get annoying because if you have them at low health, they can heal all the way back to full health. But I think they only get like 1 or maybe 2 heals. I honestly can't remember, but just expect each of the hunters to heal at least 1 time. Also, sometimes they may throw an assault turret over here and they hit extremely hard. So just be mindful of that because if you wipe from these hunters, you'll have to start from the beginning, which happened to me before and it totally sucked. I think 4 of them will spawn if you're running this solo. I'm not exactly sure though, but if you're doing this solo, just be ready to fight at least 4 hunters. This strategy will also work with the first build that I showcased, the Foundry Bulwark setup. However, it will take longer though, but at least you'll have more survivability with that build. The Pestilence is really good to use on the hunters because it adds damage over time, thanks to its weapon talent, the Plague of the Outcasts. So you're basically keeping consistent damage on them, and this helps since hunters are constantly moving from cover to cover. So guys, this is Prajna. Thank you so much for watching, and if you guys have any questions, please don't hesitate to leave them for me in the comments section. If you're new to the channel, welcome and consider subscribing. If you're returning, welcome back. And to all my channel members, I love you guys. Thank you so much for the support. You guys are amazing. Good luck farming and keep it cool, keep it classy, and see you in the next video. Peace out.